must sell people a dream of where you're going, a vision of where you're going. I'm not talking about something, that that you don't believe in. You must believe in that. And everybody harbors a dream. Everybody has, up here somewhere, people think, you know what I'd really love. But what happens is they fear the judgment of communicating this. They fear the failure should they communicate and not achieve it. They start to tell themselves that they're not good enough, that the market doesn't need it, that somebody else is already doing it. And all of a sudden, this little inner voice snowballs into this Frankenstein, and they just become paralyzed into frustrating themselves and frustrating everybody else around them. Because they harbor a dream, they harbor a vision, but they won't share it with anybody. They expect people to actually realize the dream in their business. They're looking at them every day, but they haven't shared with those people the dream that they want realized, and they expect people to know. So everybody's just frustrated, and that's why they can't get the people.
Today we're going to be diving into the great work of Brendan McGurgan. He's one of the founders of Simple Scaling. Brendan and I, we've actually done quite a bit of work together over the last few years. I've spoken at quite a few of his ScaleX accelerators on the topic of systemology, and I thought it'd be perfect to flip the spotlight, shine it on Brendan. He's been scaling and got a huge amount of knowledge from doing this in the trenches for 25 years. He was the MD for CDE Group, helping scale them from 15 people up to 700 and 25xing their revenue growth. He's also then gone on to found Simple Scaling, where they help other business owners scale. So he does it through a book, a 12-month program, an annual summit. He's got a podcast and a whole bunch more. It's a really great ecosystem that centers around the idea of scaling business. So in particular, today I wanted to dive into the 10-step ScaleX framework. So I couldn't be more excited to have you on the call, Brendan.
Oh, thanks so much, David. That's a wonderful introduction, by the way. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Well, I know we've got some limited time, so I'm going to dive straight in. Firstly, can you tell us a little bit about the ScaleX framework and whom it's for, and how you designed it with what outcome?
Sure. I'll give you a little bit of context. So I co-founded Simple Scaling, which you mentioned 5 years ago. Our vision to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small and medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. Now, why is that important? More than 90% of businesses by volume across the globe are actually small and medium-sized enterprises. In the UK, actually alone, we have 5.7 million SMEs, and they contribute actually more than half of the total UK revenue. So SMEs are really, really important. In the UK, 99% of businesses by volume are SMEs, and more than 70% of people in the workforce work for SMEs. So SMEs, we know, we love the communities that we serve. But why scaling SMEs? I mean, what's their relevance? Can we just not leave these SME leaders alone and kind of let them get on with it? Why do we inspire them? Why are we motivating them to scale? Well, interestingly, in the UK, actually, of that 5.7 million SMEs, they're contributing 2.3 trillion pounds worth of revenue to the UK economy. Half of that is coming from a mere 26,000 companies, less than 1%. And those SMEs are scaling SMEs. Now, what I didn't realize through my tenure in CDE, and I joined that business, we took it from 3 million to over 9 figures, to over 100 million in revenue, exported in more than 100 countries across the world, and set up offices in 6 continents, employing more than 700 people. I thought everyone was doing this. I was caught in this bubble for 17 years. I thought, well, that's just what people do. And I didn't know we were a scale up. I thought, this is just people go into organizations and want to grow them. And it turns out, no, they don't, or they really struggle to. And I thought that's really sad. It was only whenever I retired from the business, sold my shares, and realized that actually myself and my co-founder, Claire, who you've met, have this incredible experience, this gift of experience over the last 20 years of scaling businesses, of being involved in scaling businesses. Prior to that, I was in a technology company during the dot-com boom and bust. And whenever I was leading this company, there was a lot of stuff we had to figure out, like, not only design and develop a wonderful product and understand, your customers' problems and their pains and, solve their needs. But then you had to kind of factor in well, what is values and what is this culture thing people are talking about and strategy? What is strategy? Is that just something to talk about in Harvard or Stanford? Like it doesn't really have relevance to us as SMEs, does it? And vision, well, I'm just trying to kind of get through here. We're just trying to grow this business and, you know, mission, where does all this stuff come in? And so many SME leaders who are passionate about their customers, passionate about their product or service, are then expected to be scaling CEOs. And it's really unreasonable. They're not qualified as CEOs, they're just de facto CEOs because they've founded this business. And very few, it's quite exceptional if they are actually understand what it is to scale. So we spent a couple of years actually researching the backdrop to what's going on out there in the scaling landscape. I spoke to leaders in many different industries, leaders who your actual listeners will know, leaders in companies who your listeners will know, leaders in Gymshark, for example, the athletic clothing brand, global now, multi-billion-dollar valuation. Skyscanner we use for travel. David Logan, I spoke with him. He was one of the co-founders. Locally, Brendan Mooney at Kainos scaled a small tech company in Belfast to now they've more than 3,000 people. It's listed on AIM, valued a couple of billion. And we found that there were 10 principles consistent in every scaling success. And my background's in finance, loved Lego as a kid, loved kind of getting Lego for Christmas. We were chatting about your guys earlier. Christmas is coming. I always opted for Lego at Christmas. And I would love getting the Lego box, looking at the vision in front of the box, going, okay, that's what I'm going to build. I'd open the box, take out the instructions, run to the kitchen, get all the little plastic bowls, put all the different pieces in the little plastic bowls and start just stepping through and following the instructions to build what was on the front of this box. And I thought, let's do the same for scaling businesses, for scaling SMEs. Let's give them the instruction manual to scale their business. Hence the ScaleX 10 principle framework. So I'm kind of a logical thinker and said, there's an algorithm to every success. There's an algorithm to why somebody, looks fit and healthy. What are they doing? So we wanted to actually define for people what that success algorithm is in the context of scaling your SME.
What a tremendous insight and backstory there. And it makes me realize why we get on so well. You're a systems thinker. I can tell. Like you're talking about having a picture and you're thinking about what is the algorithm. Do you see yourself as a systems thinker? Is that something that you connect with, or do you more of a visionary, or how do you think about yourself?
I feel it's a healthy combination of both. And it's only in later years that I've now language, I suppose, to ascribe to who I am. And I've done quite a bit of work to understand what it is that makes me tick, what am I passionate about, what am I good at, what does the world need, what can I bring to the world. And I would say, yeah, it's a healthy combination, Dave, of both that kind of creative visionary. I love creating something in the future. And this is really important for your listeners. Your future should be bigger than your past. Your excitement and thoughts about your dream and your vision for the future should be much more than your memories of the past. So I'm constantly leaning into, what can we do next? What can we do next? And you referenced at the outset kind of the ecosystem we've built, and part of that, we've just recently established and launched our own investment fund to support SME leaders who require growth capital and who, of course, qualify and come through our own program. And on the other side, a recruitment company as well, because two greatest impediments to a company achieving scale, one is access to finance and the other is access to talent. So everything is informed by our vision. So yeah, I feel I'm a healthy balance between both visionary and systems thinking.
Yeah. Another thing that you mentioned at the start was this idea of a scaling CEO. And I mean, this is a common challenge with a lot of the business owners that I work with. Oftentimes they're the founder and they get the company off the ground, and often many times they're the technician, and that's the trap that holds them. I'd be interested with your experience with CDE, or as you've been working with these other businesses, like how you see the difference just between a founder CEO getting the business going versus a scaling CEO. And yeah, is it easier to have your founder CEO evolve into a scaling CEO, or is it easier to find a scaling CEO and plug them in and have the founder step back? Or how do you think about that?
It's a great question, and there there is a challenge for founding CEOs to actually recognize what they're great at, and especially in the early stages, they have their hands over every part of the business, and they have to must do is a great master. They have to become good at all of these parts, and especially like you know, unless you're running a bookkeeping business and your background is an accountant and you're offering accountancy services, very few founders like doing the books. But they find that they're downloading QuickBooks or something, and they're doing the putting invoices on at night, and um, they're getting involved in logistics. They're wrapped up in the operational pieces, maybe, or the sales pieces that typically wasn't their forte. They've innovated this product, and now they're having to go out and sell it, and so they get good at lots of different parts of the business quite quickly. Of course, those that survive get good at all of these parts of the business quite quickly. And it's their baby. They're emotionally entwined, and their identity becomes wrapped up in this baby, this business that they've birthed. So, this is why when we define the 10 principles, we recognize that the very first principle of scaling is psyche. It's the psyche of the leader. It's imperative, if the leader is actually going to scale, the founding leader is going to actually scale this business in the CEO role, they must recognize that what got them to here, in the context of taking a business from startup to, let's say, £1 million, £2 million worth of revenue, is not going to get them there, taking it from 2 to 10. They must recognize that they need to change. What does that change look like? It means I need to step back. I need to start putting systems and processes in place, all the stuff that's in my head and I know how to do. I need to actually bring people in and create these operating processes to allow people to take this from me. I need to actually become redundant in all of these roles that I have taken on. I need to constantly inquire about, what am I really good at? What is my unique ability? Yeah, I can do the books, but is that really what lights me up? Am I good at that? Could we hire a bookkeeper in? Of course we could. Let's bring a bookkeeper in. That's going to free another 10 hours of my week, and give me capacity to continue to expand and lean into a vision for the future. That requires a lot of introspection. That requires time out to really understand and become aware of what things, what skills and characteristics, this kind of tenacity and resilience and kind of just this kind of hustle nature that's got me to there. Does that continue to serve me in relation to actually scaling this business? Or has this strength in the startup phase become a shadow now as I'm moving to scaling? So we say scaling is actually an inside job. And people go, "Oh, what do you mean by that?" Don't kind of don't get all philosophical on me, but it starts with what's going on up here. It starts with a level of awareness and a humility to actually surround yourself with truth tellers, not time tellers, who actually will coach you on what you're great at and what's going to serve you in the scale up phase, and actually what you need to delegate more of.
Mm.
So it's very challenging for the founder to actually become a successful scaling CEO unless they surround themselves with great people and they are willing to examine what they're really good at and what they've still involved with that they shouldn't be
Mm.
involved with, that's now, become a bottleneck. The
Yeah.
bottleneck's at the top of the bottle for a reason. So that's on the founder side. And then if they recognize, and we see those who come through our program, founding CEOs who actually recognize halfway through the program, I'm not a scaling CEO. I actually need to step back and bring somebody in who understands what it is to scale a business. And I'll continue to champion the culture of the organization. I want to ensure that the values that I have are exemplified right throughout the business. I'll continue to be involved in product development. Maybe I'm really good on the sales side. Nobody sells your business like you, but being mindful that actually you're constantly examining, should I put systems and processes in place that make me redundant? Really, if I wrap all of this up, you must be intentional in making yourself redundant consistently. And what I mean by that is, like, getting
Yeah.
out of the existing role, leaving capacity and space for somebody else to step into that role. And when somebody else steps in, that gives you then the space to start to think about expanding the vision even further. You move up the ladder again, you make yourself redundant in this new role, and somebody else steps in, you move up. And it
Yeah.
becomes a game, but it's an inner game.
I love that. And the systems mindset, because I trip back into thinking that we always talk about the whole aim of business and the systems mindset is to capture what's currently working, make it repeatable so you can delegate it down to typically less skilled and lower cost labor to free up those higher skilled team members to work on only the tasks that they can work on, which typically don't have any systems in place. So it's that new original thought to create the system and pass it down. So that fits really well. You've got these 10 principles, and we covered the first one being psyche. And you mentioned at the start you called them principles, which makes me think, is this something that works in a linear order, or as we go through the principles, is it something that you work on all at once or little bits, or how do you think about the order?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have structured them logically. So they are in a sequence, a logical sequence. But what we wanted to do, and I know for those of you listening won't be able to see, but I'm
I
holding
should
up the
have
book.
my
Is
copy handy.
it?
Let me see.
uh,
I'll I'll I'll, I'll grab it before the end. But
what
yes,
we wanted to do, David, is create a handbook for leaders where they could follow this just in kind of the Lego build scenario, or as they continue on the journey, if they feel that there's a certain challenge in a part of the business, the challenge will always lie in one or more of these principles, that then they could dive into this specific principle and really go deep on it. So we
yeah,
have created this circular model, this circular framework, the ScaleX 10 principle framework, that has a sequential logical order if you're starting and coming to this fresh. But also, and again, those SME leaders who we enroll into our program will follow the logical sequential order as they're laid out in the framework. But at any stage, you can dive into any one or more of the principles, because ultimately, any challenge in your business is the answer is found in one of the principles.
yeah. And I think the first one, which kind of makes sense, is to first figure out, is the CEO the right person? Do they have the psyche to become a scaling CEO? And then you were already even touched on the second principle around the purpose and the vision, because you're like, you need the picture in your head. I don't know if there's any extra detail you wanted to add into that, but having a vision as a leader is key, because that, I mean, it's in the name. You're leading.
Yeah.
Where are you leading people to? You've got to have that
It,
vision.
it's exactly that. So I hear SME leaders tell me all the time, and again, back to psyche, this is a limiting belief. I can't get the people. I said, okay, well, there's never been as many people on the planet.
Yeah.
We People have never been as accessible. We can engage people from South America, from the Philippines, and everywhere in between, given the way technology has enabled us, and especially the old paradigm of getting people to march into an office and clock in for 9 o'clock and kind of march out again at 5 o'clock. That was all disrupted and broken during COVID. So we've now arrived at a place where people accept that remote working is a viable way of getting talent right across the world. So I say, okay, you can't get the people. Now, let's just take a couple of minutes. Share with me where this business is going. Come on, get me excited. 3 years' time, if we're standing here and having a beer, what does great look like? What are we celebrating? And they'll look at me and go, I don't know. Well, like the last couple of years have been okay, and if we can kind of continue with that kind of growth, maybe. And I'm bored after 60 seconds. You can't get the people because you're not exciting great people to want to join your dream of a better future, to join your vision of the future, to take this wonderful product or service that you have and bring it to a wider audience, to actually build this incredible team that are knocking it out of the park, to create this culture that is revered right across your industry, disrupt your industry because of your culture, create this world-beating product, exporting it across the globe. You're excited about where you're going. The people around you are excited about where you're going. And you've got this organization that is revered for, like Seating Matters in Limavady, revered for its processes and systems. Imagine being a company that's revered for processes and systems. The Japanese come and visit. This is the vision that Ryan Tierney of Seating Matters was selling all those years ago. Ryan, who participated in our program recently. He sold this vision to people, and people now are coming to this little remote village in Northern Ireland, taking less money than they're getting in their existing jobs because they want to join in his vision for the future. They're bought into it. They're aligned. They can see that their goals, their dreams, their aspirations are going to be realized in the context of this bigger vision. So you must sell people a dream of where you're going, a vision of where you're going. I'm not talking about something, that that you don't believe in. You must believe in that. And everybody harbors a dream. Everybody has, up here somewhere, people think, what I'd really love.
Yeah.
But what happens is, and back to psyche again, they fear the judgment of communicating this. They fear the failure should they communicate and not achieve it. They start to tell themselves that they're not good enough, that the market doesn't need it, that somebody else is already doing it. And all of a sudden, this little inner voice snowballs into this Frankenstein, and they just become paralyzed into frustrating themselves and frustrating everybody else around them, because they harbor a dream, they harbor a vision, but they won't share it with anybody. They expect people to actually realize the dream in their business. They're looking at them every day, but they haven't shared with those people the dream that they want realized. And they expect people to know. So everybody's just frustrated. And that's why they can't get the people. The great people are out there, but people want to join something that is better than their existing situation. And when the power of crafting your vision, creating your own dream for the life, the business that you want, is so, so, so powerful. Nobody is waiting for you around the corner to say, Dave, when you have 5 minutes, would you give me a little shout there? I've got this wonderful dream for your future, and I'm just going to step you through it. Nobody is going to do that. You must do it for yourself. And when you do it for yourself, others will want to join. And that's when it becomes really powerful. You're creating this direction of travel which informs everything else you do. I led this conversation with our vision is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small and medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. I didn't write a book because I thought, it'd be wonderful to write a book. It was informed by the vision. I didn't launch a podcast, thought, that'd be nice, I'll give the podcast gig a go. It's informed by the vision. I'm on this podcast today because we're both aligned, we're both serving the same communities. It's informed by the vision. Everything then, your life becomes informed by the vision. It informs what you should do, but importantly, what you shouldn't do. So that vision then anchored in a compelling purpose. And what I mean by that is just understand why you want to do this. Just examine your reasons, and yeah, to have more money, and setting all of that aside. And money's important, don't get me wrong. It's important, and it becomes an echo of value. The more people you serve, the more money you will actually receive. So that's why having a vision that allows you, enables you, inspires you to serve more people becomes incredibly important, because the more people you serve, actually, the more wealthy that you will become, your team will become, the organization becomes, and it just becomes a ripple effect from there. So purpose and vision, understand why you want to do this, and the deeper and more meaningful your reasons for doing it, the more energy reserves you'll create in the challenging times when you're going. I always say that wet Wednesday in November when you're crawling out of bed, go, oh, this is tough. If your purpose is strong enough, you'll navigate the next steps. So purpose and vision, the second principle.
Oh, hey, I know you're tuned in right now, so I'll keep this super quick, but you like awesome YouTube videos, don't you? Well, there's not really that many YouTube channels that create great content about how to systemize your small business. So I want to make sure that you catch every video that I publish. So if you haven't already, firstly, give this video the thumbs up, and then go ahead and subscribe to my channel. You can even hit the bell notification to make sure that you're the first to know when I publish anything. So go ahead, do it right now. I'll wait a sec, and then I'll transfer you back to the video. I love hearing it intertwined in everything that you do, to the point that there is a sign behind you that says inspire, connect, and enable, which were the exact words that you were using as part of your vision. Like, you're bringing this vision into reality, which then kind of leads us to the next step, which becomes a big magnet for people, which is your next principle. And you kind of touched on that, and I can see how that would draw in. Can you tell us a little bit about, like, the people? And I mean, I can see this logical order, even though, like you said, there might be different times where you lean into certain things. Logically, the next step is great. Well, now you need a team.
Exactly that, because scaling isn't a single player game. It's a team game. It's a multiple player game. It was Zig Ziglar who said, you don't build a business, you build people, and people build a business. And it's incredible when you inspire people, when you inspire yourself with a vision, you inspire others. It becomes infectious, and great people will want to join you. And you don't have to get caught up then in the how, which leads us on to the next principle, of course. But ultimately, it's recognizing that the world is full of great people. If you hear yourself saying, I cannot get the people, start to examine why that is the case. And what I would say with that is, sit down this evening, after dinner, go onto your phone, go to your website, go to your people section of your website, and tell me how inspired you are reading the people section of your website. Tell me if you were an ambitious person who has their own personal goals, who wants to expand themselves and be rightly challenged, would they join your organization? Answer that question. And if it's yes, you have no problem getting the people.
Yeah.
So, again, it's an old African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And ultimately, scaling is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So it's recognizing that you must inspire others with a vision of the future, anchored in a compelling purpose. And now we start to build this team and create momentum. Leading on to the fourth principle, which is then creating the plan, which is dissecting and taking the vision. And we typically take people through a process to craft their 10-year moonshot. So kind of the North Star, as people will have heard, or the BHAG, that kind of, are we going here or are we going here? Is it northeast or is it southwest? What's the direction of travel? If I'm going on holidays, am I going to North America or am I going to Australia? Am I going in the winter? Am I going in the summer? Because when you start to put a little bit of detail in this, go, okay, I'm going to North America, well, I need to think about the exchange rate, I need to think about dollars. If going to Australia, I don't need to think about the American dollar exchange rate. So just starting to articulate a little bit around your direction of travel begins to inform the plan. And the beauty about you creating the vision for the future is you inspire people who will actually create the plan on your behalf. It's not you having to create this vision, you having to think of how I'm going to actually, how am I going to do this? Which paralyzes lots of small and medium-sized leaders. But you bring people together who are specialists in their particular area, and they support you in creating the plan. So we take the 10 years down into a 3-year kind of vivid vision, leaning on the Cameron Hurld methodology. We're both very familiar with Cameron's work. And then taking the 3-year, breaking out the 4 or 5 kind of key themes in that, revenue growth, implementing processes and systems, developing our teams. What are the kind of 4 or 5 key themes that are consistent within this bigger picture vision? And then we look at 1-year goals for each of those 4 or 5 themes, and we break those 1-year goals down into 90-day objectives and key results. So now every day that somebody's coming into your business, they're working off a 1-page plan. We call it our ScaleX Navigator. Everybody literally on the 1 page, all doing work that they know is aligned to 1-year goals, to a 3-year vivid vision, to a 10-year moonshot. So now they feel, actually, I'm doing something that's worthwhile. It's not just going through the motions. It's not just transactionary. I'm not just rocking up and taking a wage. Actually, I can see momentum here. I can see, every day, every week, and we celebrate momentum every week with what we call our wins of the week. We collect those every month. We get together every quarter. So you start to create this level of momentum based on a plan which has been created by the team, not you. So it becomes our plan. So again, something I hear a lot of is, my people just won't take responsibility. They're not accountable for anything because you have told them what to do. Let them tell you what they're going to do in the context of your vision. Let them create the plan. And then they become accountable to what they've said they're going to do. So that becomes your plan, the 4th principle, and you can start to see kind of the logic of how this stacks up.
I love this.
we get then to the 5th principle of processes and systems. So we've created the vision, we've got our team assembled, we've put the plan in place, but are the processes and systems that we currently have in place, are they fit for what we're trying to do here? And when I think of kind of processes and systems, I think of 3 overarching functions of any business. There's the function to win the business. So it's everything from lead generation to closing sales. There's the function to deliver the business. So it's all the operational pieces. And then there's the function to kind of ensure your customer's success. So typically in a B2B environment, you're selling something to a customer that's solving their problem or supporting them in achieving a goal or realizing an opportunity that they want. So you want to ensure you're checking in on their success. The more successful they are, then the more successful you will become. So you kind of don't leave the relationship just after you've sold it to them and delivered it and kind of handed them across the keys. You want to be checking back consistently on how successful they are. So 3 overarching functions of the business, and we want to put processes and systems to ensure that ultimately you're constantly building the infrastructure to scale the business, an infrastructure, a foundation that supports the ongoing scaling of this business in the context of the vision. And we say this coming from our old friend Michael Gerber, if you have a business and that business is dependent on you, then you don't really have a business, you have a job, and it's the worst job in the world because you're working for a lunatic.
Yeah.
You've got to be focused on setting out the processes across the winning the business, and you really, and from a scaling perspective, you should be focused on building a sales machine. a machine that is consistently driving and generating for you leads that delivers repeatable and predictable revenue. That's where you should start. And then when that's flowing, you're going to have to build out the systems to ensure you can deliver that successfully. And when you've delivered it successfully, you've got to build out the systems to ensure that you're actually your customer's successful with the product or service that you've supported them with. And then we move on to performance, the sixth principle. And that's, if you're not keeping score, you're just practicing. So you've got to put down, well, how are we going to define success? What does it look like in 90 days? What does it look like in 6 months? What does it look like in 1 year? What does it look like in 3 years? Let's start to put some numbers around this. What would it look like? X percent increase in leads, X percent increase in revenue, X number of customer testimonials, an increase in our net promoter score, an increase in our employee net promoter score, whatever it is that you define as success, ensure that everyone is clear. And now we're playing the game. We're not practicing, we're actually in the tournament. You've got to define and measure what matters to you. And then we kind of get into the final phase, which we get into a proposition. You can stop me at any stage, Dave, because
this is great. You're on a roll.
Excuse me. So we move into the proposition. And very simply, you're either solving a problem or you're servicing a need. It's as simple as that. And what happens with founders, they tend to get emotionally wrapped up in what they've developed. It's their baby. And they believe that everybody should love their baby and everybody should love the latest feature on the baby that they have developed. I have news, folks. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Unless you can articulate the value to your customers really clearly, and you can only articulate the value to their customers if you've actually taken the time to listen to what your customer actually needs in the first instance, the pains that they're encountering, the problem that they're struggling with, their goals, the opportunities that they want to realize. You must become that pain detective. Spend time listening, not kind of showing up and throwing up with the latest features of your product. Customer doesn't care. They want to know that they've been listened to, they want to know that they've been understood, and they want to get comfortable and confident that actually you're the person with your product or service to enable what they're trying to do. So proposition is so critically important in the context of accelerating your scaling journey. And everyone in the organization should know the problem that you're solving or the need that you're servicing. Everyone.
I feel like that's definitely one that Elon Musk is quite famous for, the way that he just obsessively focuses over the product, getting feedback from people. And he finds by doing that, I mean, you're ensuring the success of your client. They then become the raving fan, and they're the ones out there marketing your product. So getting that right, once you've got a little bit of momentum, you do need to get started but then becoming really focused in on that. I think once you've got some momentum, I can see how that would just accelerate you.
Absolutely. Spending time with your customers. And what happens again as the company continues to scale, likely as a founder, now you're spending less time with your customers. You're not as close to customers as you previously were during the startup phase of this wonderful journey. But it's really important that you empower those at the front line to continue to inquire and be curious about the customer's pains and not get emotionally attached to the latest feature. Customers don't care. I always loved cars growing up. Absolutely loved cars, and kind of as teenagers we would kind of roll up on a Saturday night and we would be under the bonnets of our cars. I drove a Mercedes for 4 years. I don't think I ever lifted the bonnet once. I don't care anymore. I don't care what's going on under the bonnet. But as a technical engineer, people have devoted their lives to creating this engine. I don't care. I'm not buying the car now for what kind of the
Yeah.
intricacies of the engine. And too often as founders, we want to tell people about the latest fluxometer, about this latest little widget that we've developed, and people don't care. Solve their problems, service their needs, and ultimately you will accelerate your scaling ambition. Which moves us on to then place, which is the eighth principle. And I truly believe that if you've got a wonderful product or service, then you should seek to bring that to the world. You're doing it, Dave. You don't have to do it. I mean, this is what your fourth or fifth venture now. You know, you're doing it with systemology. You've written the books. You've launched the podcast. You've got the program. You know, you could have easily just kind of closed the front gates, put the feet up after the last success. Well, I don't need to do this anymore. But you felt compelled, purposefully compelled, after your interactions with Michael Gerber, to actually craft the vision for the future, to go out and kind of almost give your baby away, to bring these, to attract and recruit these systemologists into your tribe, who are going out and evangelizing and coaching people and enabling people in their challenges in the context of scaling their business. You didn't have to do any of that. But ultimately, back to kind of my belief that when you've got a wonderful product or service, which you do, then you've an obligation to bring this to the world. And there's never been a better time in history to bring your product or service to the world. We're switched on 24/7. All of the technology companies out there have enabled us to sell our products while we're sleeping, if we build the right systems, if we're servicing a need or solving a problem. We can fly anywhere in the world now more cheaply than any time in history. We can access new countries more easily than any time in history. So there's no reason, but back to psyche again, well, I don't think they would want us in that market. Have you visited? Have you asked the question? Have you tried? So the eighth principle that's consistent within all successful scaling organizations is their desire to take their product or service beyond their existing border. And then we go to the ninth principle, which is partnerships. You don't have to do this all yourself. Leverage the who, not the how. And often the challenges that we have within our businesses, we're asking ourselves the wrong question when we say, how can I do this? The question should always be, who can I get, whose skills can I leverage that will enable me to achieve what I'm trying to achieve in this new market, in this new territory, in this new sector? So leveraging partnerships. All wonderful scaling businesses, all successful scaling businesses are based on successful partnerships. Whether that be in the supply chain, whether that be in the distribution channel, they're all based on successful partnerships. Which brings us then to the final principle, which is the keystone principle, which holds the entire framework together. And that's focusing on building a positive growth culture. There's a wonderful quote, I think it's by James Clear on Atomic Habits. It says, environment is the invisible hand which shapes all human behavior. Understand that when there's more than you in the company, you've now got a culture. Now you can decide whether you just let that happen or you be very deliberate in modeling behaviors that you want to see existent in this company as it continues to scale. And that requires you to understand what you value in the first instance. And I don't mean just kind of looking at corporate websites, we're going to stick integrity down there, we're going to put respect down there, and kind of, you know, that's all BS. It's all nonsense. Decide what kind of culture you want to create and model the behaviors that are aligned to that culture. Your culture ultimately is the most empowering principle in the context of achieving scaling success. It's that old cliche, I think it was Peter Drucker says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I never really truly understood that until the latter years of our scaling journey. And then I realized, shit, it doesn't matter how inspiring the vision is. It doesn't matter how good the plan is. If people are rowing against you because the culture is in some way soiled or contaminated by 3 or 4 individuals here not aligned to your behaviors and your values, it fucks the whole thing up.
Mm.
And it starts to become difficult. You start to experience a level of friction. You wonder, why the hell is this happening? We've got clarity of vision. We've got a compelling purpose. We've got the right people. We feel we've the plan in place. We've processes and systems. We performance metrics. What's happening here? Why is this feeling so difficult? It's because ultimately your culture is failing somewhere. Back, you used referenced Elon Musk earlier. I think of culture as the launch pad of the rocket.
Yes.
I think of positive growth culture as the scaffolding. You think of that rocket kind of ready to lift off. I see purpose as the burners. Yes, this is why I'm getting out of bed. That it knows where it's going. You've got this control room. They've keyed in all of the coordinates because they've clarity and vision. They know exactly where this rocket's going. They've created that vision here. This is the direction of travel, over here, not over here. But ultimately, that rocket will never lift off if there's a fracture in the scaffolding, which actually supports it in that takeoff phase. So you've got to be consistently, maniacally examining the integrity of your culture. And no one else is responsible for that, only you. And I think of this kind of, we were chatting about your two boys earlier, and being a parent is challenging. It was almost easier for me at a time managing 700 people and 3 teenagers. I recall reading in a parenting book some years ago, kind of the 4 key components of being a good parent, and they were enshrined within an acronym called CAM, and the C stood for communicate. So as a leader, you should communicate consistently, communicate often. You cannot over communicate your vision. This is the other point whenever you're scaling the organization. Every opportunity I get, I open the podcast with it. We inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small to medium-sized enterprise to scale with purpose. Even those who come into our community now can recite our vision better than their own, because I'm saying it repeatedly, I'm saying it often, I'm saying it consistently. So communicate. The A is advise. So seek to advise. Don't tell people what to do, but advise them using kind of the wisdom of your experience. L is listen. Really listen. I interviewed Chris Voss, the FBI negotiator who wrote Never Split the Difference. And we were talking about kind of being a hostage negotiator. I said, what's the one skill above all other skills that makes you a wonderful hostage negotiator? And these are in life or death situations. He said, my ability to listen. And I don't mean active listening. I mean actually listening.
Mm-hmm.
Being fully present, not thinking as somebody's talking, hurry up with this blah 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 blah, because I'm going to tell you now what you're going to do. I'm choreographing and constructing what I'm going to say to you as your mouth's moving open and closing here. No, actually listen. And the M then is modeling, and modeling being the most impactful. So kids are wonderful in this. My eldest daughter is high functioning autism, so she holds a mirror to things very, very frequently. So as a kid, when we shouted at her to stop shouting at her siblings, she would just say, "But you're shouting at me." Oh, and she was absolutely right.
Yeah.
What she wasn't hearing what I was saying, she was modeling what I was doing. And people will hear only a little bit of what you say, but they will absolutely model what you do. So it's for you to decide what behaviors, what values that you want to see in your organization. if you were a fly on the wall in this organization today and you were able to look down, are people behaving in a way that's consistent with your own values, with your own behaviors? Because ultimately, culture is what people are doing when you're not there, when you're not looking. So if you've got a culture that's actually consistent and conducive to scaling success. So that was a tour around the framework, Dave.
I absolutely love that. And as you're going through each one of those and knowing the work that you do at ScaleX, what I love most is that you are the best example of what it is that you teach. And it was through us walking through the steps today, even the small things of inspire, connect, enable, which is how you led. And that's also then it happened at the end that it just kind of linked it all together. And there's just so many examples of this. There's so much wisdom built into this. Yeah, I'm gonna pop a link through to the book so people can take a closer look at that. In the time that we do have together towards the end, I can't go by without sort of throwing AI into the mix because from a disruption perspective and what it's doing to business, I've not seen anything have as big an impact as this or likely to. And what I love about the 10 principles that we just went through, they're foundational. Regardless of what happens, they're always going to be true and correct. But in the context of scale and what you see going on in business, I don't know how you're seeing AI impact or if the businesses that you're working with are embracing this change to help them scale quicker, or yeah, what are you seeing on that front?
AI is an enabler to the fifth principle. You will see it every day, undoubtedly, in terms of enabling processes and systems. So the biggest waste, and I think you alluded to it at the outset, Dave, the biggest waste in any business is the waste of unlocked human potential. And what AI is bringing is the technology to enable mundane, repetitive tasks, which allows then people to use their imaginative faculty, which is the one faculty that distinguishes us from all other mammals, the ability to actually dream, the ability to think about a different future, the ability to contemplate, the ability to perceive. So this AI allows us to do this. And practically, where have I seen it work really well? Taking my own podcast, and I'm sure you're using it for yours as well. It helps wonderfully with researching the guests.
Yeah.
It helps now. We have it so well instructed that I can get 10, 15 questions generated from AI. You know, we've been learning and coaching our AI model for 12 months now or more. So the questions are very much in my tone, in my style. I tend to read the books of all of the guests that I bring on to my podcast, and I have a nice reference base for the questions then that are being generated, or the research that's being generated by AI. So we're using it quite effectively in the context of the podcast, and in the context of the podcast episode launch. Then we've used it not only in terms of drafting some of the marketing scripts, but also creating these unique and wonderful pictures that are aligned to the actual substance of the content of the episode itself. We're using it, directly ourselves. I feel what certainly on what I've seen, the SME community are largely wondering where this is going to land. So I still think that it's the preserve of the big companies. I'm not sure if it is necessarily been adopted by SME leaders yet. We're seeing pockets where some of the customer service elements, so back to kind of winning the business, delivering the business, ensuring the customer success. In the ensuring customer success, we had a mastermind actually 2 weeks ago. A wonderful guy, Aaron Mooney, who runs Action 24 Alarms based in Ireland, scaling quite significantly, and they have reduced the manual requirement to service the support calls with an AI-enabled chatbot. and
Yeah.
they haven't actually reduced the efficacy of the calls. So their actual net promoter score is still very high, but they have reduced the manual kind of hosting of customer calls as a result of the technology enabled by AI. So I'm seeing,
Yeah.
both directly ourselves, practical applications of AI, and we're seeing pockets of it being adopted in our own community. I still feel a there's still a fanfare around AI, and kind of you've everything from in another 20 years nobody's going to have to work on the planet. We're all going to be taken over by robots to actually, I think this is kind of the preserve of Silicon Valley, and it'll blow over. I'll come back to it in a couple of years' time whenever actually there are tools that have been developed specifically to enable SMEs. So yeah, look, there's undoubtedly
Yeah.
it's changing things. I don't think we have to. I don't think we have to kind of get overly anxious that, oh no, I haven't got AI into my business yet. This is going to impede my scaling success. Certainly something you should be looking at, something you should be leveraging for your sales and marketing efforts, your lead gen. Um, and as we've seen then, from the example I've gave you, certainly in the customer success side, it will undoubtedly change the way we develop our processes and systems and make that much easier, which is only a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. The more I think about it, and that process piece, you're right. I naturally default into that, and what we talked about at the start of always delegating down to typically less skilled, lower cost labor. I feel like there's that next level, which is you'll be delegating down to machines. So it's
Yeah.
that whole idea of just keep delegating down so that you can work on higher value tasks and create, like in principle number 10, the positive growth culture is embracing change and trying new technologies. And that's part of it. Look, yeah, we covered a huge amount of stuff. I absolutely love your framework, and I love that we've been able to do some great work together. If people want to find out a little bit more about the work that you're doing, where's the best place to point them? Do we point them to the book, to the website, a little bit of both?
Yeah, thank you for asking. The website is simplescaling.com. You will find then links to the podcast, ScaleX Insider. So we've weekly releases. I interview scaling leaders, authorities, change makers, disruptors, from across the globe. And I'm very active on LinkedIn as well. So if anybody wants to connect me on LinkedIn, it's Brendan McGurgan on LinkedIn. And yeah, look, please feel free to reach out, DM me on LinkedIn if this has been of value to you. Let me know what's resonated. Let me know if we can help in any way. But I love what you're doing, Dave. You you're making processes and systems sexy again.
Thank you.
You're kind of I always referred to kind of the processes and systems implementation as eating dry Weetabix. You've brought the milk.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Oh, too good. Well, I think yeah, we are a perfect fit. Like I'll make the process bit work and you make the rest of it work. So thank you so much again for your time today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.